everyone. Let me adjust the camera real quick, but I do not know where to begin with this review, because I'm reviewing a film that like Michael King, there's not really that many movies I truly hate, but this film is one of them. I'm of course talking about the 2010 sequel to the previous 3 films in the series, of course. I'm talking about Resident Evil Afterlife. This movie is written, produced, and directed by Paul Wild Stallions Anderson, who of course brought us such movies as Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, Soldier, Alien vs. Predator, Death Race, and of course the first Resident Evil movie. And of course he wrote the other 2 as well. Now, I will admit I have only seen a couple of his movies. I mean, the only ones of his movies I've seen are Mortal Kombat. I have the other 2 he did in the 90s over there that I need to watch them sometime. And of course Resident Evil and Alien vs. Predator. Death Race I have not seen, but I've heard, I think most of the stuff I've heard is negative. It's been a while since I've heard anything about it. 3 Musketeers I still haven't watched, and I'm not looking forward to the next Resident Evil movie, but this is probably my least favorite of his movies that I've seen. That is right. I like this movie a lot less than I like Alien vs. Predator. Alien vs. Predator to me is a guilty pleasure, along with its sequel, Alien vs. Predator Requiem. But this movie hardly has anything redeeming about it, and you will see why. Now, of course, the first thing about this movie that pisses me off is the fact that when Resident Evil Apocalypse came out, Anderson was like, oh, this is going to be the 3rd and final film in the series. And of course it leaves off with a sequel-ish ending, but it ends on a perfect note. Alice about to go get some vengeance, along with all her clones, and Umbrella and Wesker being screwed. But then this one picks up. Now, the first thing you will notice if you have a keen eye is that hardly anything seems dead. If I remember correctly, wasn't the entire world supposed to be dead? The only way I could think of that not being the case is if Alice was misinformed during the events of Apocalypse, and Umbrella was just making it seem like the T-Virus did that, or it just did it to certain planets and not all of them. But still, kind of a big thing to forget. But anyway, the movie takes place 5 years after the outbreak of the T-Virus. Alice and her clones show up at an Umbrella building, and they attempt to kill Albert Wesker, in this movie played by Sean Roberts. Wesker escapes and destroys the base, killing all the clones, which off the bat, that kind of makes the clones useless. I mean, you could have done so much with the clones, like have them fight a horde of zombies. That would have been cool. And you only see like 3 clones anyway, and of course that's seen from the trailer. Is that any way to treat a woman? If the woman is stealing the spotlight from the game characters, yes, that is how you treat a woman. Anyway, Alice basically is stripped of her psychic powers by Wesker, which that basically kills one of the few things I was looking forward to in this movie. One of the things about this movie I was looking forward to was a fight between Alice. Yeah, I'm going to mispronounce her name, that's how bad she is. Alice and Wesker, because Wesker, as it showed in the trailer, was going to have his supernatural powers that he gets after his death in the games. But here, he strips Alice of her powers and makes her normal again, which kind of takes away the joy. I was expecting the climax of the movie to be a fight between Alice and Wesker using their superpowers. That would have been kick-ass. But no, she loses them in the first 10 minutes of the movie. About half a year later, Alice is back in North America, trying to find out what happened to her buddies from the previous film. She only finds Claire after Claire attacks her, and she finds a device put on her chest by Umbrella, which is one of the things that takes from Resident Evil 5 in the movie, which I'll get to that in a little bit. And apparently Claire has no memory of what happened. So the 2 travel to LA, and they find some more survivors living in a prison surrounded by zombies. And of course, we get a bunch of characters, like we get a character that used to be a Hollywood producer, which you really want to smack him because of his nature. We get a bunch of other minor characters. We find Chris Redfield is a prisoner in the facility, which never explains why, if I remember correctly. And the only likable character of the whole group of the survivors, or at least the one that you really want to see survive, is, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so I'm looking on Wikipedia to see what the character's name is so I get it right. It's Luther West, played by Boris Kojo, which, like I said, he's the only likable member of the group that you really want to see stuff from. And the one thing I will say is one of my few things about this movie I like. And the one thing I will say about him, he's a black guy in a horror movie that doesn't die. What a twist! And also, they do a fake death, but then he emerges at the end and he like shows some zombies who's boss. Yeah, that's right. So if there's anything I'm looking forward to with the last film, hopefully the last film, is that his character will make a reappearance because he's a likable character. Now, if he had been the star of this movie and the whole movie was about him, that would be cool. Anyway, eventually zombies, you can guess, make their way into the facility. And this is the thing that kind of pisses me off because they bring Resident Evil 5 stuff in out of nowhere. The game's built it up with 4 with the Las Plagas, and then, of course, we see that they're transformed into the Magini. But here, no build-up whatsoever. It's just giving us... It's just basically told to the audience that it's another mutation of the T-virus like Alice's powers. I call bullshit on that, folks. As a fan of the game and as a viewer, I call bullshit on that. Why didn't we see them before? I mean, at least the runners in the previous movie, they explained how they came to be because of them trying to cure the T-virus infections and at least doing it a little bit. But here, the Magini zombies, no excuse. And granted, I'm one of the guys that likes Resident Evil 5. It's not as good as the previous games, I will say, but I still like it. And I call BS on that. And another thing, later on, where we see Wesker has one of the things. Wesker never was infected with the T-virus. It was a different type of virus. His virus is kept to check by injections, but it basically just gives him superhuman powers. There's no excuse for him having that. He doesn't get the Ouroboros thing until the very end of Resident Evil 5, so... Jesus, if there's anything, he shouldn't have had those until the next movie. But... Anyway, like the previous films, Alice does take away the luster of the game characters because they don't even get to have much of a confrontation with Wesker. And of course, you can guess eventually they do show Wesker, which the guy that plays Wesker, I will say he's one of the other thing I like about the movie because he doesn't really capture the character. Granted, a little bit, he acts a little bit too much like Agent Smith from the Matrix movies, but he does capture the essence of Wesker's characters more so in the later games, like how he is in 4, mostly 5. But he does capture it and he does look like it. Like, I do like how he uses the glasses, how he throws them. Granted, that's a 3D shot, obviously, but I do like how he does that, then capture him, and then he slicks his hair back a little bit. That I did like a little bit. And then, of course, the dogs have it, too. And then, of course, despite this supposed to be the last entry, it ends with a sequel bait ending. Oh, great. Where we see Jill again with the thing taken from Resident Evil 5 with no explanation of what the heck happened to her. Just like this is the one thing with these films, they never explain a lot of stuff. They never explain how Jill disappeared in between 2 and 3. They never explain what happens to the little girl. They never explain when and why Jill leaves. It's just... That's why I say, Paul, let the freaking movies die. Like, the new movie's gonna have to explain where Ada and Leon come from when... In the universe, isn't Leon supposed to be dead? Wasn't he Jill's partner? Isn't that what you put in that one fake Raccoon City paper that you guys distributed at Comic-Con 04? Trust me, I was there. I have it somewhere. I remember that paper. So don't try to tell me Leon was... I can only see if like he didn't die. But... I don't know what else to write about the movie. The script sucks. A majority of the acting sucks. The only reason I think that Mila Jovovich even has a career nowadays is because of her hubby. I think they're married, aren't they? I'm checking. I believe they are married, or not. They're at least domestic partners on a... I'm checking. Yeah, they are married. They've been married 2 years. Yeah, only because of her hubby. And I know someone's gonna point out, but okay, I gotta make the point a little more. The only reason, like I said, she has a career is because of her hubby, Paul Wild Stallions Anderson, casting her in a bunch of movies or getting other people to hire her. But I bet someone's going to say, but Mario, you don't have a problem with Helena Bonham Carter being put in all of Tim Burton's movies. True, but there's a difference, like I've said before. Helena Bonham Carter at least had a career beforehand that had a bunch of movies. Like she was in that movie Hamlet, she was in that movie where she played that one Royal, that is infamous for its whipping scene. She was in that one Mary Shelley's Frankenstein movie, among others. Those are just the ones that come off the top of my head. But the only two movies that come to mind that Mila Jovovich was in before she was in Resident Evil were that Joan of Arc movie and The Fifth Element. And I don't even think the Joan of Arc movie was even that popular, from what I understand. I don't really hear people talk about it much. The Fifth Element, people talk about it, and that's probably my favorite movie she's been in all honesty. But most of the stuff she's been in happened after Resident Evil. Let's see, after Resident Evil, she was in, of course, all the sequels. She was in Ultraviolet, The Perfect Getaway, The Fourth Kind, Stone, Bringing Up Bobby, Three Musketeers, etc. Most of the movies she was in beforehand, she was in Chaplin. I didn't know that, but and Dazed and Confused. But I never really hear her talked about for those movies. Usually the other actors that they talked about. Like for Chaplin, it's usually Robert Downey Jr. who's talked about from that movie because of his performance in it. But most of Mila Jovovich's is post-Resident Evil. Pisses me off, and also pissing me off is that you can tell that Paul Anderson is basically just catering to his wife with how he writes these scripts. I mean, first movie, it's understandable. No game characters except for the monster, so there, her being the focal point. But the subsequent movies, even granted, I like Apocalypse and Extinction to an extent, but she basically is overshadowing the game characters. I mean, the second movie, she's overshadowing Jill Valentine, one of the central characters from the game. Resident Evil, the third movie, she's overshadowing Claire Redfield, another one of the central characters from the game. And then for the fourth movie, she beats up Wesker and once again overshadows Claire and Chris Redfield. And Chris is supposed to be Wesker's nemesis. He's basically his nemesis in the game. I mean, at the end of 5, Wesker is so pissed off at Chris. You know that infamous thing, Chris! Him wanting to kill him. Just overshadowing, and I bet in the next movie she's going to overshadow Leon as well. And probably, and most likely Jill and even Ada. It's going to just be another little nail in this series' coffin. That's a lot to say, Anderson. After this next movie, let the series die. Let it die for your own good. Let it die, and then let, like, 5 or 10 years from now, let a reboot happen. Because in all honesty, with what he's turned the series in, me, Matt, and Michael King locked together in a room could come up with a better Resident Evil movie than this. Yeah, and of course, it'd probably have a lot of ass shots because of Michael, but yeah, it's not like that'd be a bad thing. It's like, okay, scene 42, what do we put in here, guys? Yes, Michael, I know you want another shot of Claire's. I know you want a shot of Jill's ass again, alright? We can only put so many ass shots in this movie. We could put more action, cause, so Matt, you write the action sequence. You're the action guy, you write how you want the zombies' heads to explode. See, we could write a better one. It'd probably be Michael King concentrating on the sex appeal, Matt on the action, and me on the story. That's probably how it would go. The movie would be way better. Because in all honesty, out of all the Resident Evil movies, I haven't seen the CGI one yet, so I can't really count it. In all honesty, the first one of the live-action ones is the best. Granted, it has no game characters, but with how Anderson has done stuff subsequently, that's probably a good thing. And also, I think it captures the tone of the games the most, the survival horror aspect. You're all going to die down here. I am a British girl, so I am pretentious and pompous. Stuff like that. The only other thing I could say about this movie is it has good songs, like that song at the beginning of the credits. Disconnect and self-destruct, one bullet at a time. Everyone does have his day to die. That's a good ending song, I will say. But other than that, this movie doesn't have that many good notes. Think of it, how many notes? The one black character, the guy that plays Wesker, the soundtrack. That's about it. This movie, I have to say, this movie fails about as epically as Mortal Kombat Annihilation did. Granted, that one fails for a whole different reason, for being a clusterfuck because of all the characters and also bad writing and effects, but it fails just as much as that. I wouldn't say it fails as much as Double Dragon does. Granted, I haven't seen it yet, but from what I hear, that's probably the worst video game movie ever made outside of Uwe Boll's movies, but it's on Netflix, so I'll be the judge of it. But this movie is at press time is my least favorite video game movie. Now, people will hate this movie, but this is my opinion. The Super Mario Brothers movie kicks this movie's butt. The first Blood Rain movie, from what I remember, kicks this movie's butt. Now I know this would probably be controversial. From what I remember, the Street Fighter movie kicks this movie's butt. The first one, not the Chun-Li movie. And most definitely, the Mortal Kombat movie kicks this movie's butt, rips its head off, freezes it, takes the mask off, burns it alive, gives it the kiss of death to cause it to explode, and then points and taunts at it saying, "You suck. Is that your best?" Because for me, Mortal Kombat is the king of video game movies. And the sad thing about that is that Mortal Kombat was directed by the same guy that directed this movie. I had sad to say it, but Paul Anderson, you've lost the Midas touch. Then again, it's kind of hard for me to say that because I haven't seen his last movie, but for me, you have lost the Midas touch. You lost it for me after Alien vs. Predator, because granted, you picked a crappy script with crappy human characters to do, but at least you showed that you were a fan of the Alien and the Predator films with how you filmed the monster fights. Because even if you hate Alien vs. Predator, most people who hate the film still admit that the actions, the scenes between the two monsters fighting are filmed well, and you can see he's a fan from that. But since then, I haven't really heard anything good about you. Now what we need the Paul W.S. Anderson from the 90s, the guy that directed Mortal Kombat, the guy that directed Soldier, the guy that directed Event Horizon. Yeah, hell, even the guy that directed the first Resident Evil movie. If we had that director back, things would be better. But no, he's too busy placating his wife so she'd give him the pole position. No. My rating for this movie, in all honesty, for the few things I like, it's just a charitable rating too, a 1 out of 5. That's me being honest, just from the few things I like about it. And if you want a good excuse to tear a movie a new, you know what, be my guest, watch it. I'm actually glad I did not pay to watch this, that I waited for stars and then I taped it in case I want a good laugh. This movie sucks. Even the Cowardly Lion could say that this movie sucks.